Shield Hero used to be one of the best isekais out there, and if you ignore the fact that Season 2 was a thing, then it probably still is. But we all know that's impossible, so it's safe to say that it definitely got worse. But what's the reason? Was it because the characters were more dry than my lips in a hot Arizona day? Or is it because the plot was the same as my relationships? I've never had one. At the start of the series, Naofumi is introduced as a character who was summoned with 4 other heroes to save the world that they were just summoned to. Now to start off, Naofumi was already out for the worst time in his life, because it turns out that the nation he was summoned to has meat with him of the cow variety. Well, not really him, but the weapon he has. How do you have beef with a shield? I have no clue. But he just got there and he's already being ostracized by both the king and the other heroes. Fast forward by a couple minutes and we can already see he was framed for grape without the G, kicked out of the kingdom when he thought he was free, then he had to flee. Well, that escalated quickly. Now, normally when someone gets accused of something like that, their first goal is to try and avoid everything that could even insinuate the fact that it was true. So what does our shield hero do? He buys a slave. A child slave. Pedo. During the time they spend together, he basically trains her and they become great friends and act like a safety net for each other. And to be honest, it was pretty wholesome. Fast forward a bit more and you get some other allies like a bird, a princess, and a bow. You know, I'm starting to see a pattern here. But somehow he ends up back in the kingdom he was exiled from, but this time the queen's there. And she figured out that her daughter not only lied about the grape incident, but also the fact that she tried to kill her own sister. They had a huge trial and found out that she was lying, so both her and the king were sentenced to death. But just like the MC he is, when they were about to be executed, Naofumi stepped in just to show them mercy. But in all honesty, I think death would have been better. He nicknamed these two, well, this. Trash! And this. Bitch! And that's basically where it left off. There was some more, but it was just basically end of season filler. It was also the last time I could actually remember enjoying Shield Hero. I had to go back because I couldn't remember anything that happened and watch the second season to write this. And to be honest, I gave up after 6 episodes and just decided to watch everything in 1.5 times speed. I'm not sure if it's because he already got his revenge and it didn't really amount to much, or if it was just a case where the characters lost their charm. But after the first season, the characters just didn't seem to have the same interesting charm that they did. Because at the beginning, Naofumi was all about his sweet revenge. My guy was fueled by a fiery passion of 1,000 shields, ready to unleash hell upon anyone who wronged him. I mean, who doesn't love a good revenge plot? But after he got his revenge, the plot went from Game of Thrones levels of drama to Teletubbies levels of... well, you get the idea. Don't get me wrong, we all love character growth as much as the next person. But when the action takes a back seat to shopping sprees and diplomatic tea parties, it feels like watching paint dry on a shield. It wouldn't be so bad if it was just the revenge plot that died out because, to be honest, the series had a lot of other stuff going for it. Or so I thought. Like, remember when Naofumi's world was just as vibrant and exciting as any fireworks display? Even that seemed to have died off. As the series went on, something just seemed to shift. The world of Rising of the Shield Hero started feeling as dull as a butter knife. Now, don't get me wrong, they threw in all sorts of stuff to spice things up, from new characters to giant beasts and mystical artifacts. But somehow it always felt like they were just slapping a fresh coat of paint onto a crumbling wall. Sure, it was fun to see everyone explore new places, beat a giant turtle and find some ancient weapons, but it was like watching a magician perform the same tricks over and over again. Impressive at first, but eventually, the magic fades. Even the world building, or lack of it, was like the creators just sprinkled in all these cool ideas without bothering to connect the dots. We started with an exciting and really good world, and we were left with a world that felt as shallow as a kiddie pool with no real substance to sink and drown in. Okay, that got a bit dark. As the series progressed, it felt like the once thriving world of Rising of the Shield Hero was slowly losing its luster, like a fading dream slipping through our fingers. No amount of flashy new additions could recapture the magic we felt in those early episodes. There was even something off about the characters themselves. Their personalities that made us fall in love with them seemed to have taken the back seat after season 1. Naofumi went from being this complex, morally grey character to some goody two-shoes hero that I could find in any other isekai. It's like they took away all the edge that made him so cool and fun in the first place. And don't even get me started on Raftali and Philo. These two started off off as Naofumi's fierce companions, and at times they seemed more useful than him. It always seemed like each of them had their own stories and demons to conquer. But after season 1, they kinda just became, well, sidekicks. There was no growth or development. They kinda just stayed stagnant right throughout the series. Adding new characters is always gonna be fresh and exciting. I mean, who doesn't want new waifus? But when they start stealing the spotlight from our main cast, it feels like we're not getting what we signed up for. And even the main point of the story eventually gets boring. I actually like the idea of a hero who uses a shield instead of a sword. When I first watched Shield Hero, I thought it would be boring for that specific reason. I mean, think about it. While everyone else is running around with flashy swords and magic staffs, Naofumi over here like, I've got a shield and I'm not afraid to use it. It was refreshing and unique, and at times it was really cool. Picture this, Naofumi standing on a battlefield deflecting attacks left and right with his trusty shield. He's kinda like a medieval warrior mixed with a football goalie. Or if we want to get more accurate, he's more like an Isekai Captain America. And to be honest, with how well it was done in the series, it was kind of a vibe. But as awesome as it is to see Naofumi holding his own with just a shield, even the coolest gimmicks can start to lose their charm after a period of time. I mean, how many times can we watch him block attacks and bash monsters before it starts to feel a bit repetitive? It's like the writers were so fixated on the novelty of the shield that they completely forgot to give Naofumi some new tricks and interesting stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Naofumi should have just ditched the shield altogether and start dual wielding katanas or something, as if he could anyway. But a little variety never hurt anyone, right? I get the fact that the shield absorbs things and gets stronger by doing that, but at some point it just became expected and predictable. So the novelty of what used to be a unique ability turned into something extremely dull. Now, it's not always boring. There are times when there was some variety, but it was pretty rare. Even the way they tried to throw in action got pretty meh after a period of time. With the whole waves thing, I get it. It's a convenient way to throw in some action without having to come up with real plot. But after a while, it just feels like filler. But I would have been willing to forgive all of that if the characters had the same level of development right throughout the series, including the other 4 heroes. Instead of relegating them to the role of sidekicks, imagine if they had their own arcs and storylines that ran parallel to Naofumi's. And I know I'm not the only one that at some point in the series forgot that there were other heroes. I mean, come on, the legendary heroes that were chosen to save the world, and yet they're getting their butts handed to them left and right. They were always messing things up, but it seemed as if when Naofumi stepped in, things just got worse. And to be honest, it really didn't have to go this way. Imagine if instead of being constantly overshadowed by Naofumi, the other heroes could have had their own arcs and storylines that explore their motives and struggles. If they had any. Although if they did that, it would just end up making them look stupid when you compare to Naofumi's struggles, so either way they lose. Rising of the Shield Hero has all the ingredients for an epic anime masterpiece. All it needs is a little bit of polish and a whole lot of heart. To be fair though, Season 3 wasn't as boring as Season 2, but it still wasn't better than Season 1. I'm not saying that Rising of the Shield Hero is beyond redemption, it's actually far from it. So I'll make a bet. If there ends up being a Season 4 and it ends up being good, I'll chop off my balls. Before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow your boy on Twitter because I recently made one. And I'll see you guys next week.